We now turn to a new Netflix documentary examining conversion therapy, the practice of using psychological and physical tactics to force LGBTQ individuals to change their sexual preference, something that has long been discredited but still remains legal in some form in 30 states. The documentary is called Pray Away. It follows both its former leaders as well as survivors. Take a look.
My whole entire life was structured around not being gay. There was a high population of youth who were at Living Hope. It was at least 50 people that were cycling through. We weren't allowed to have outside contact with each other, so we weren't allowed to be friends on Facebook or to know each other's last names. The reason that we couldn't share any identifying information was because they were worried we would all meet up and have sex with each other. We were only allowed to talk when we were, like, supervised.
That was the voice of Julie Rodgers, who just heard from. She joins us now, along with Pray Away director Kristine Stolakis. Welcome to the show, both of you. Appreciate you talking with us.
Thank you for having us.
Julie, you were forced into conversion therapy after you came out to your parents at 16 years old. Describe what that was like for you.
Yeah, I came out when I was 16 years old on Valentine's Day, and my parents both told me they loved me, and I knew that my mom was completely devastated, and there was a clear sense from my family, like, the only option was for me to try to live like a straight-ish life. So the next week when my mom pulled me out of school and took me to meet with Ricky Gillette, the executive director of Living Hope Ministries in Arlington, Texas, I felt like it was really the only option I had. It was the only path for me to make my parents proud, to find approval in my community, and to be good.
And so you went willingly, thinking perhaps I'll be able to get rid of this desire that I have, I'm assuming there. Give us a sense of then what happened once you went to this religious facility in order to try to rid yourself of being gay.
So I did go willingly. I think at the age of 16, it's questionable because you're exclusively reliant on your parents for survival. But I met weekly with Ricky Gillette for counseling, and then I went to a weekly support group that functioned kind of like church youth group meets a 12-step program, where we would all go around the circle and sort of confess any sort of like sexual falls that we had that week, any feelings that we had for crushes at school, things like that. And then I went to youth retreats in the winter, Exodus International Freedom Conferences every summer. And basically, at one point, I lived in a live-in home they had. All of my life and the lives of many, many hundreds of youth that I knew were almost entirely structured around trying not to be gay.
And Kristine, I'd like to bring you in here. Your interest in conversion therapy comes from a personal place. Tell us about that.
Yes, so my uncle actually was sent to conversion therapy after he came out as trans as a child. And what followed was a life of tremendous mental health challenges. That includes addiction, depression, suicidal ideation, tremendous anxiety. The list is long. This is very common for people that go through something like this. And he actually passed away a few weeks before I went to film school. And I decided that I wanted my first feature documentary to be about the Pray the Gay Away movement and the conversion therapy movement. And when I started doing research, what really struck me is that the vast majority of people who lead these movements are actually LGBTQ themselves. They're people who say that they know how to change and that they want to teach others to do the same. And for me, that really helped me understand the depth of my uncle's desperation and hope that change was possible, and of course his devastation when change never came. And then over time, as we made the film, we weaved in Julie's story as well, who primarily experienced the movement as a survivor, to really ground the film in the undeniable harm and trauma in the movement. Because regardless of this not working, which it doesn't, the truth of the movement is that it causes pain and trauma. That is undeniable.
And according to studies by the UCLA Williams Institute, Kristine, more than 700,000 LGBTQ people have gone through conversion therapy. What are the consequences that make it harmful to so many who go through it?
Well, if I can just pause on that number for a second and say that number floored me in my own research. And I'd also like to say that conversion therapy continues on every major continent. So this is a very present tense issue. So many of the things I touched on in terms of what my uncle struggled through are the impacts of this movement. It is pain and trauma made manifest. There's physical effects as well. That's something that we talk about in the film, is the prevalence of self-harm and devastatingly suicide in this movement, which is a, sad, horrible, logical conclusion of being taught to hate yourself. So there's so many ways in which this harms individuals. It harms families. The list is long, but the pain is undeniable.
And Julie, I'd like to come back to you just to get a sense. Have you ever known anybody who said that it worked? I'm changed, and now I'm heterosexual. And on top of, I'm also curious if you were able to recover from the trauma that you experienced.
So I'm connected to hundreds of people, probably over 1,000 people who went through the programs, and 98% of those people are just have accepted themselves as some version of queer and are living that out now, whether in religious communities or not. There's a tiny, tiny percentage of people who claim that despite their ongoing struggle with same-sex attractions, they have married somebody of the opposite sex and they're trying to live a life that they believe that their Christian community tells them they have to live in order to be accepted. So, but most of them don't claim that they were healed. That tiny percentage of people just say they're struggling through their sexuality with a spouse. In terms of healing, I myself struggled with a lot of self-harm, and the statistics show that the youth who are subjected to conversion therapy are twice as likely to have attempted suicide in the last year. It's the consequences of this are devastating. And I have found that healing, because of so much of this happened in relationships where we were rejected, where we were told explicitly that we weren't wanted if we told the whole truth about ourselves. Healing for me has looked like finding communities of people who say, we see you, we love you, and we absolutely delight in you exactly the way you are. And to find that there are many, many thousands of people, tons of communities, even faith communities who will choose me and where I know that I'm truly wanted.
And Julie, last question to you. What do you hope that people will take away from watching Pray Away?
I want them to know, first of all, that conversion therapy is continuing to happen. It's the primary response to people who come out in evangelical communities. And white evangelicals make up a quarter of the voting bloc in the United States. So this is an enormous, a huge percentage of the population. And, Living Hope Ministries, Ricky Chalette, they're still going. They're thriving in these communities. And he's speaking in megachurches to tens of thousands of people, telling them that the right thing to do when a queer kid comes out, that God's response is for them to reject them. And so I want them to stop doing that. And I want straight folks in those communities to go to their pastors and say, hey, if we are supporting this in any way, something that leads to double the suicide rates, then we're going to pull our funding and we're going to go worship elsewhere. Kids deserve to know that they can be seen and safe and loved by everyone in their communities. They deserve to feel safe at home. And so I want the people practicing conversion therapy to stop. And I want the queer people in those communities to know that there are so many people that will welcome them and delight in them enthusiastically, exactly because they are who they are, that this world is more beautiful because they're in it.
Julie Rodgers, Kristine, Stolakis, we thank you so much for joining us. Pray Away, which is executive produced by Ryan Murphy and Jason Blum, is available now on Netflix. The Living Hope Ministries declined to comment to the filmmakers nor provide anyone for an interview.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.